All right, welcome everybody to another live stream. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about market structures, right? So I'm going to run through a very quick intro to market structure as a topic, and then I'm going to zoom in primarily today on the market structure called monopolistic competition. It is not feasible for me to do all the market structures all at one go. This live stream will be far too long. Yes, I am in the classroom. If you want to, come by, you can, but I think it's too far for you. All right, so anyway, the market structures, right? What is this topic about? In the chapter called Demand and Supply, what we did, right, was to take a very simplistic view of markets, right? Where in a market, there are many buyers and many sellers, and they're selling a product. So, and we implicitly assume, right, that the product is the same product, right? Market for chicken rice is just chicken rice. Market for track shoes are track shoes. Market for watermelons are watermelons. There are no different types of watermelons. So we took a very simplistic view of markets. Now, that when we move away from the demand supply chapter, we say, okay, let's try to understand markets in the real world a little bit more precisely. Then we discover that there are many different kinds of markets. Like, for example, there are certain markets that are dominated by one big firm, and there are markets that are dominated by a few firms, and then there are markets that are many different firms. So because of this, right, then economists say, well, actually markets are not all the same. So let us try to classify these markets into different features or characteristics. Then we realize that in the economy, there are many different markets that exist, right, along the entire spectrum here, that there are far too many for us to study and understand. So economists decided that, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it more organized in a simpler way. So we say, okay, let's create 4 theoretical models of market structures, and we call the first one perfect competition, right? And this is where you have many small firms producing a homogeneous product. And then you have the one that we're going to feature today called monopolistic competition. So it is highly competitive market structure, as the name suggests, monopolistic competition. And then you have the third one known as oligopoly, right, where you have a few large firms dominating the market. And then you have the extreme one called monopoly. The first thing I want you to know, right, is that the real world doesn't behave like what theory wishes it to behave. There are not 4 market structures in the world. There are 4 theoretical market structures. In the real world, some market structure possesses the characteristic exactly like monopolistic competition and sits on this spot. But there are also many other market structures that sit around. They have features of MPC, but they are also a little bit like monopoly in some perfect competition in some ways. They also share some characteristic in oligopoly. There are others that are exactly like oligopoly. There are some that are closer to oligopoly, but they are leaning a little bit towards MPC side. And there are some like oligopoly, but exhibit some features like the monopoly side. So there are many market structures. So when we study the theoretical market structure, it is very easy to fall into this trap, right, of thinking that the real world must conform to the theory. The real world will never conform to the theory. We are constructing a theoretical framework to ease our understanding. When we apply this in the real world in essay questions or case study questions, don't try to force the real world to fit your theory. Adjust your theory to fit the real world, right? Because the theory was just a simplistic framework we created to simplify our understanding of the real world. So don't force your real world into the theory. Modify your theory to fit the real world. That would be a better strategy. Now, this is the general overview of market structures. The most important idea behind market structure, right, is what we call the CBP framework, where the letters C, B, and P refers to characteristics, behavior, and performance. What's the key point about this framework? The key point of this framework, right, is to understand that the way firms in an industry behave, or what we call behavior, right, is a direct consequence of the characteristics of the firm. So because of the nature of these firms, they behave in a certain way. And because they behave in a certain way, it translates into certain outcomes, or what we call performances of these firms as well as the industry as a whole, whether they do well or they don't do well. the characteristics sometimes also directly contribute to the performance. So there's a set of arrows that link characteristics to behavior and behavior to performance and characteristic back to performance. At the same time, there's another set of arrows, right, that flow the other direction. So performance, for example, right, has implication on characteristic as well as on behavior as well. So there is feedback effect on the outcomes of the firms can rechannel back to behavior. For example, R&D activity is an action, is a behavior. How a firm can engage in R&D, whether they are able or willing to engage in R&D, in part depends on outcomes, whether they have high supernormal profits or not, will play into whether they have the ability to engage in R&D. So performance certainly can affect behavior. And the outcomes of these firms that can do R&D, right, can also then contribute to high barriers to entry that the firms experience as well. So characteristics affect behavior and performance. Behavior and performance in turn affect each other and in turn affect characteristic as well. Okay, so as far as JC Econ student is concerned, what is the key point that you need to pay attention to, right, is where is the marks? Where are the marks going to come from in the exam? The content knowledge, right, are the yellow boxes, the C, B, and P, right? Understanding the characteristic of each market structure, the behavior, and the performance account for no more than 40% of the marks in the exam. The remaining 60% of the marks lie in your ability to explain the connections between C, B, and P. So when you're studying, please don't focus only on the C, B, and P. Focus on the logic behind how characteristics drive behavior and performance and the feedback effects. All right, so with that introduction, right, we're going to now go straight into the monopolistic competition. So first we draw out this framework where we introduce the characteristic behavior and performance framework. So under characteristics, we have 4 key characteristics, which you by now, I hope you should know. If you don't know, let me run through very quickly. First characteristic, C1, is number and size of firms. C2 is nature of product. C3 is the degree of perfectness of market knowledge. And C4 is entry barriers in the long run. Okay, so let's run through them one by one. So in the C1 characteristic, right, we say that the monopolistic, this MPC, in case you don't know, in case you just join our live stream, you don't know what we are talking about. We are focusing on monopolistic competition today. So in the monopolistically competitive industry, there are many small firms. Now, some of your schools, right, are going to describe C1 as many sellers and many buyers. Is that correct? That is correct, right? That is perfectly fine. It's just that in the A-level syllabus at the moment, all market structures have many buyers. So then there's no point in saying that PC firms got many buyers and sellers. MPC firms got many buyers and sellers. Oligopoly has many buyers but few sellers. Monopoly has many buyers and one seller. They're all many buyers, right? So if they're all many buyers, then we usually won't bother to emphasize. So we focus on number of sellers. So there are many sellers and there are small sellers. The implication of the fact that there are many small sellers, right, is that no single firm gets to alter market outcomes via unilateral actions. What does that mean? That means, right, if a firm decides to say, I'm going to shut down and stop producing, am I going to cause a disruption to the supply of this good in such a big way, right? It will drive shortages and drive prices up, right? No, right? You're too small to matter in a big way, right? If one firm closes down for whatever reason, decides to shut your doors, or one firm, I don't know, for whatever reason, right, caught fire and your factory burned down, it's not going to make a difference to the market supply of this good in a significant manner, right? So this is the idea of many small firms. And they are all selling a slightly differentiated product. So different from perfect competition, if you already know PC, then PC has a perfect competition has homogeneous product where the goods produced by each firm is a perfect substitute to one another. Here in MPC markets, they are close substitutes to each other, but they're not perfect substitutes, right? So think about in your hawker store, for example, I stay in Pasir Ris, right? I go to the Pasir Ris hawker center. Some days I will eat at the wonton noodle store. Some days I will eat at the fishball noodle store. Other days, I will have nasi lemak, for instance. They are not the same good, but they are essentially a relatively low-cost breakfast, right? I can eat at my neighborhood hawker center. To me, they are substitutes. They are relatively close substitutes. I feel like eating wonton mee today, but the queue is a bit long. I don't feel like queuing up. Then I go to the fishball noodle store, for instance. Right? So to me, they are not perfect substitute, but they're close enough for me to relatively easily switch, right? So they are called, this is an example of many small firms selling a slightly differentiated product. Now, C3, there is slightly imperfect market knowledge. Now, I want to pause at this moment and emphasize the point. In some of your schools, right, your teachers don't use the term market knowledge, they use market information. That's fine, right? If your school use market information, that's fine. But I just need to be clear in your mind that it's not the same concept as in market failure. In market failure, when we say consumers have perfect information or imperfect information, that means when consumers consume good X, my perceived MPB and my actual MPB may not be the same thing. That's called imperfect info. But here, C3 is talking about imperfect market knowledge, as in the consumers may not know, right, about prices of goods and services between firms. Like, for example, if I go walk into a shop, firm A, right, sells this product for $7, for instance. Maybe there's a shop nearby, right, that sells at $6, but I may not be aware of it, right? So it's not about whether the satisfaction I get from this good, right, is going to be higher or lower than it actually is. It's about whether I know about the market price or whether I know about the quality, right? If firm A sells a good for $7, firm B sells for $6. If firm A tells me that my quality is better than firm B, that's why I charge higher price. I don't have 100% perfect info. I don't know if that's 100% true, or I know that maybe the fellow is just lying to me. But because there's only a slight imperfect market knowledge, the sellers, right, don't get to exaggerate the difference in product quality excessively, right? If you tell me that I'm a little better than my rival and charge me a little bit more, maybe I'll fall for it, right? But if you tell me that I'm selling this, okay, I'm selling wonton mee, right, for $5, and then the next shop is selling wonton mee for $85, for example, no consumer is going to be like, oh, your wonton mee is so much better, right, that it's worth $85, right? So assuming we're all in the hawker center, that is, right? Maybe you are in some, I don't know, very atas kind of a restaurant, maybe you can sell $85 wonton mee. Right, so these are the first 3 of the 4 characteristics. I deliberately left out characteristic number 4 because characteristic number 4 is something we'll need later on. Right, so I want to talk about the implication of characteristic number 1, 2, and 3. The first 3 characteristics, right, translate into this thing called a low price setting ability. What is the meaning of price setting ability? A lot of students learn these words, but they don't know what it means. So I would like to give you a more simple way to understand. Price setting ability, think of it as the ability to raise my price against my rivals without losing market share too significantly. If I have no price setting ability, like perfect competition, when I raise my price even a little bit, I lose all my market share. So I have zero ability to set prices higher than my rivals. So price setting ability means that if I have low price setting ability, I could raise my price against my rivals a little bit and expect not to lose all my customers. I can lose some of my customers, but I cannot raise my price too much. Once I raise my price a little bit too high above my rivals, I will lose all my market share. So one fishball noodle store can sell for $4, the other one can sell for $4.20, $4.30, maybe even $4.60, $4.70, but they will be quite hard pressed, right, to try to push to $5.50, $6, right? If you're talking about same hawker store setting, right, you can't push your prices far too high, right? That will cause the shops to not be able to, you will lose too much of the market share. Now, in contrast, right, oligopoly, right, have high price setting ability. Monopolies have high price setting ability. They are able to raise the price against their rivals very significantly, and yet still not going to lose a lot of customers. Like, for example, you go to your coffee houses, right? You go to your Starbucks coffee, or your Coffee Bean, or your Luckin coffee, and there's Chargi, right, or Chagi, I don't know how to pronounce that, right? So they can charge, I don't know, $6, $7, $8 for a drink, right? And yet they're not going to lose their market, they're not going to lose customers, all their customers, right? Because they have found a way to gain price setting ability. They're able to charge a higher enough price because they are somehow able to convince their consumers that their products are worth that money, right? So the low price setting ability come from where? Come from the fact that I have a differentiated product. My product may be better than my rival, right? And therefore, I can warrant a higher price. But because it's only slightly better, I only have a low degree of ability to set a higher price. But I also have some imperfect market knowledge. I can exaggerate the difference a little bit more than it actually is, but only slightly as well. So that also limits the extent of price setting ability. Plus the fact that there are many competitors nearby, right? Such that the transport cost consumers have to incur if they don't buy from me, they go to the next nearest shop, right? It's going to be so low, right, that no consumer is going to be deterred to switch to a cheaper alternative simply because of transport costs. Right? So these are the three characteristics that lead to this thing called low price setting ability. Because of this low price setting ability, we say that firms in the MPC are heavily reliant on price competition. Okay, so this is the part where a lot of students have a misconception. A lot of you have this idea that because they cannot set prices different from each other, please pay close attention to this part, really important. A lot of students think that because they cannot set prices different from each other, there is very little price competition. Now, this idea stems from many students wrongly thinking that in a perfectly competitive market where firms are price takers, so nobody can set at a different price, then they wrongly conclude that there is no price competition. When in fact, it is the opposite. The perfect competition market structure, right, results in one unified price and one single price in the market precisely because the firms in that market compete entirely on price. That means the only form of competition is price, and the competition is so intense that it forces every company to ultimately charge at the same price. Now, once you have a little room for product differentiation, a little room for price discrimination, then your firms can deviate away from perfect price competition to have a limited use of non-price competitive strategies, such as, right, I might package my product a little differently, right? I might give my wonton noodle, right, a little brand name, right? Like for example, the wonton noodles store I go to and my Pasir Ris hawker center is called Uncle Lee wonton noodle, not related to me, although same surname, right? And then there is the one in Joo Chiat, what called Fei Fei wonton mee, that is very famous, for example. So they use branding, right, as a way to do some non-price competition. That all these contribute to telling the consumers, right, my product is presumably better than my rivals. If you believe me, come give it a try, right? Pay a little bit more, right? And if you like my product, then it reaffirms your belief that my product is better, right? So they can do a little bit of that, but you will be hard to find a store, right, that can charge $80 for wonton noodle, right? Or charge a store, right, that can charge a $45 plate of nasi lemak, right? So this is where your high degree of price competition is the result of the low price setting ability. It comes from the three characteristics, and it is at the same time the same reasons that lead to the limited use of non-pricing strategies. Okay, so conclusion. MPC firms are competitive. They use both price competition and non-price competition, but they primarily use price competition as the main mode of competition. Non-price competition is used only to a small extent, right? So that's the key learning point. Next, we say that now we go to performance. P1 performance is that firms can earn supernormal profit, normal profit, and subnormal profit in the short run. Why is this possible? The reason why this is possible, right, is most of the students don't get this again. So this is a common misconception. Many students think that there are no entry barriers in the long run for PC and MPC, means there are no entry barriers in the short run. There must exist entry barriers in the short run as well as exit barriers. Why? If there were no entry barriers in the short run, what will happen, right, is that supernormal profits in the short run will attract new firms to come in to compete for those supernormal profit. If there were no entry barriers in the short run, these new firms will come in, it will compete away the profits. The only outcome is normal profits will only exist in the short run. But the fact that our conclusion is in the short run, firms are capable of earning normal profit as well as supernormal as well as subnormal means that there must be BTEs, barriers to entry and barriers to exit in the short run. So important point to note. Not that exam you will be tested on this, just be aware that barriers to entry, no absence of entry barriers for PC and MPC is a long run idea. All right, let's move on to the diagram. Now, a lot of students have a difficulty learning how to draw a diagram. So first take note, the vertical axis of this diagram is price, revenue, and cost curve of a firm. So when we look at firms diagram, market structure topic, right? The diagram we are drawing is the diagram for a firm, not an industry, right? Just one firm. And the vertical axis will write price, revenue, and cost, right? Because there will be revenue curves in here. We'll look at the price of the good, and we're also looking at cost curves, right? I was recently told by some students in some school that the teacher said, cannot write price, revenue, cost, can only write price and cost. There's no such thing. There's no price, revenue, cost. Then I was wondering, what the hell is this R, right? AR curve, the R stands for average revenue, right? So please write price, revenue, cost. Now, some of your school teachers are quite insistent on you labeling the origin as 0. So do that for them if they insist on that. So this is the AR curve. What is this? This is what we call a price setter, right? A firm that has price setting ability has a downward sloping AR curve. Now, what does that mean? That literally means that a firm gets to decide what price to sell. If I sell P naught, then the AR curve is a line that tells me, right, how many units I can reasonably expect to sell. Right, so for example, if I decide to sell at $9 per unit, then I can reasonably expect to sell maybe 100 units per week. That is the meaning of average revenue curve of my one firm, right? So I have a firm, if I sell at $9 a piece for whatever it is I'm selling, I could expect that per week I'll sell 100 units of this good. Now, if I decide to offer a cheaper price per unit at $8, for example, my AR curve tells me that ceteris paribus, every week, if I sell at $8, maybe I can sell 107 units maybe, right? So that will be another point on the AR curve. So when we say that firms have price setting ability, they are not just setting a price, they are concurrently setting P and Q. So take note, P and Q are determined together as a pair. So the terms, the implication of this for exam, right? Implication for this for exam is that price determination and price and output determination, they mean the same thing, right? So these two mean the same thing in exam. So there are some questions that you will see in your 10-year series or in the 25-year question banks, right, that I've given to you, that you have many questions that use the phrase price determination and many questions that use price and output determination. Okay, I have a question, but the existence of the AR curve doesn't imply that it is advantageous to set price, right? So let me click on the thing here. Okay, so I have a question. The existence of a AR curve doesn't imply it is advantageous for the firms to set price. No, it doesn't. But having said that, though, it is certainly advantageous to have the ability to set price. Right? Once I have the right to set price, then I open the door to a range of pricing strategies, right, that allow the firm to pursue different goals, right, or different strategies. So price setting ability is surely a good thing, right? If you are a firm, you will want to have the ability to set price. Because once you cannot set price, your strategies as a firm to raise profits suddenly become very, very, very limited. All right, so any firm that can set price will want to set price, right? But it's not how much price setting ability is not up to you, like it's according to your market structure. All right, so this is the AR curve. Now, last week we already learned, for those of you who were here on the live stream last week, right, that the MR curve, right, is a line that is twice as steep as the AR curve. If you don't understand why, please feel free to go back to the recorded video of last week's live stream. And if you're wondering why the MR curve can go into negative region, then also please go back to the recorded video of last week's live stream to see why this is the case. So when you draw this diagram, right, there is a certain sequence of drawing that I would recommend to students for exam. Always start with labeling of axis. Okay, don't forget to label your origin. So once your axes are drawn and labeled, the first thing you do is draw the AR curve. Right. The second thing you draw is draw the MR curve. Right? When you draw the MR curve, right, draw the curve twice as steep. Roughly, right, take any line, right, and roughly pick a point that is equidistant. Put a point here, take a ruler, and then draw a line, right? And that gives you the MR curve. Do you cut through the horizontal axis to go below negative region? Up to you, right? If you want to go below at negative, that's fine. If you don't want to, that's fine. Some of your teachers don't like it, then don't do it, right? So this is the AR curve and MR curve. Then the next thing you do, step number 3, draw the MC curve. Right, so AR, MR, MC curve. Normally for the MC curve is a U shape. Right, we don't typically care about the falling tail, so either we don't draw the falling tail altogether, we just draw it as a upward sloping line, or we draw it with a little bit of a falling tail just to look cool, right? If you have it, you don't have it, doesn't matter. Then once you have this step number 3, step number 4 is identify your profit max point. So your profit max point is the intersection of MR and MC. Remember from last week's lesson, last week's live stream, the MC curve must be cutting the MR curve from below. So this is your profit max point. And then number 5, your profit max output. So from the profit max point, you draw a dotted line to get your profit max quantity. Then after that, once you have your quantity, step number 6 will be to look at your profit max price. So once you get the Q, you go back up until you reach the AR curve and then draw a dotted line here, and then you find your profit maximization price of the good. So that's your step number 6. So you got all your axis in, your revenue AR, MR, MC in, profit maximizing point, profit maximizing Q, go up to the AR curve and get your profit maximizing price. Then the last thing left to do, right, is to draw in the AC curve. How are you going to draw the AC curve? That depends on what kind of profit you want to draw. If you're going to draw a firm that earns supernormal profit, then draw the AC such that, right, at the Q, watch carefully, as the Q goes up to touch the AC curve, the value on the vertical axis, AC, is lower than the price. Right? So if you want to show super normal profit, then this is the way to show it. Now, a few things to take note of. The intersection of MC and AC must be such that MC cuts AC at the minimum point of AC. Now, if you don't know why or forgotten why, please go back to watch the video or recorded live stream of last week's session where I explained the mathematics behind. If you don't want to watch the video because you don't think it's important for your exam, don't watch, because it is not important for exam that you understand why, or you don't have to explain why. It's good to understand. If you don't, because you find it too mathematical for you, I know some of you have an allergy to math, right? If you are one of those allergic to math people, then just remember, right? MC cuts MR from below. Right? You'll be really cool that you want to understand. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Right? If you like it, please go understand it, watch the video, and help you understand why that's the case. Right? So anyway, MC curve cuts AC curve at the minimum point. So ensure this. So this is your normal profit. And where's the area representing normal profit? Hey, where's my pen not working? Oh shucks. Are you hanging? What's wrong with my pen? Oh no! Sorry, it was lagging. I think it's StreamYard. Like at home it lags. I'm coming to the center to use the computer here, it still lags. All right. So anyway, where is the supernormal profit? The supernormal profit is this area. right? The difference between price minus AC, right? Multiplied by Q, right? If you expand this, P naught, Q naught minus AC naught, Q naught, then this is TR naught, this is TC naught, and this is profits, right? So this area is literally profit per unit times number of units produced. So that's your total profit. What is the YT video cursor? Oh, is this a YouTube video problem? I don't know. I think it might be a streaming software problem. Maybe because I'm not using the paid version of the streaming software. Maybe I should spend 200 bucks on this. All right. So anyway, that's the supernormal profit graph. All right. So for the firm to earn supernormal profit, as I illustrated here, is the way we draw like this, right? Now, what happens if you want to show subnormal profit? To draw subnormal profit, right? Very simple. You just draw the entire AC curve, right? Entirely above the AR curve, right? So this is the AR curve. You draw the AC curve entirely above the AR curve so that, right, at the profit maximizing quantity, if you go all the way up to the AR curve, this is your price. But if you extend it further until you touch the AC curve, you get average cost higher than price. So if P less than AC, then P minus AC is a negative number, right? Then times Q, then you get what we call negative profit. And negative profit in economics is known as subnormal profits. Right, so this is the way you draw a subnormal profit diagram. Right, so quite straightforward. Now, the one that a lot of students have difficulty with, right, is how to draw a normal profit diagram. So this one is a mistake. Let me change this. Right, so how to draw a MPC firm with normal profit? So for normal profit, right, I have to draw it such that at the Q, as I draw the dotted line up to the AR curve, I get the price. But I also need the AC to be equal to price to get normal profit. Meaning that at this point, my AC curve also must be here. But there are two ways the AC curve can be here. One is to be a tangent. The other way is for the AC curve to cut through, right? So which one is it? It has to be a tangent. It cannot be an intersection, right? Why it has to be a tangent? Why it cannot be an intersection? To help you understand this, right? Let me zoom in on this a little bit. I don't know if you can see this. All right, so I hope you can see the zoom in version. So if I were to zoom in here, right? If I move from this quantity to a higher quantity, then you realize that the AC is now higher than the AR. So that means the profit, right, becomes a negative profit when I move beyond this point. If I move to the left, then I'm moving to a point where the AC is again higher than the AR. Again, cost per unit higher than revenue per unit, I have a subnormal profit. On the right-hand side, cost per unit is higher than the revenue per unit. Again, I have a subnormal profit, showing that this normal profit point is the highest profit because anywhere to the left of this quantity or anywhere to the right of this quantity, I get a lower profit. I get a subnormal profit. Wait, have I gotten back to normal size? View, zoom, page switch. All right. Okay, so this is where we can illustrate how when a firm produces more than Q naught or less than Q naught, its profit went from normal to subnormal in either direction. This is why mathematically, right, you need this to be a tangent. So when you draw this graph, right, let me redraw it for you. Please watch carefully. So once you determine where is your MRMC intersection point, then you get up to this point. So I need a tangent to be here, but I still need the MC curve to cut the AC curve at the minimum point of AC. So I have a turning point here. So how I draw this, right, is I will draw a turning point, but I need this guy to be a tangent to this curve, right? Then from here, I curve up. This is my AC. So I need to ensure this is a MC cuts minimum point of AC, and this is a tangent between AC and AR. So these are the 2 points to take note of when drawing this diagram for normal profits. All right. Then next, in the long run, the firm can only earn normal profits. Why is that the case? It's because there are no entry and exit barriers. Now, this part is a bit hard, so please follow closely. Ask any questions if you need to. All right. We begin with a firm earning super normal profit in the short run equilibrium. So this MPC firm happily going along making super normal profit in the short run. New firms that are outside the industry looking at these firms inside the industry and say, wow, these guys are doing really well. Right? These guys are making a lot of super normal profit. I want in, right? I want in on this market. I also want to sell this stuff. So new firms wish to enter, but they can't, right? In the short run, there are entry barriers, right? They cannot easily enter. Maybe they cannot find shop space. Maybe they need to get licensing. Maybe they cannot get essential raw materials supply chains set up readily in the short run. So for one reason or another, in the short run, there is difficulty to enter the market. But eventually, in the long run, there should be no significant entry barriers. They can relatively easily enter. Now, so what happens when new firms can enter the industry? So here's the crux. When new firms enter the industry, each firm that was initially already in the industry, your AR curve tells you that at this price, I can expect to sell so many units, right? Now with more competitors, right, at each price, I would expect to sell fewer units, right? I am no longer going to be able to sell so many units. At each price level, I'll be able to sell fewer units because I got more competitors. So how do you draw this? You have to draw it as a inward shift, right, or leftward shift of your entire AR curve. So because the AR curve shows at each price level how many units I can reasonably expect to sell. So with a new entrance coming in, I can only sell fewer units. So I draw this as a inward shift of the AR curve, right? So when I draw this inward shift of the AR curve, where does it get to? Now, here's the trick. Remember, we need to get to normal profit at the end. And if you recall, normal profit must draw it as a tangent, right? So I must draw my AR curve inwards until it becomes a tangent to the AC curve. So the way I draw this, I need to push this guy, slide this guy in. But if you look carefully at my picture, right, you realize that my blue color AR curve and my black color AR curves are not parallel. The reason why we draw them with a slight change in gradient and become a little bit less steep, right, is to acknowledge that as new firms come in, the price elasticity of demand for each firm's product, right, changes a little bit, right? It becomes a little bit more substitutable simply because there are more substitutes available. Now, this difference in the gradient, right, do you need to show this in the exam? Then it depends on your school. In some schools, right, like I think Raffles in Hwa Chong, in Dunman High, in NJC, for example, they tend to require that you shift the curve inwards and tilt it in recognition of the greater competition makes your product more substitutable. But then there's a whole bunch of other schools out there, right? The teachers' view is different. The teachers feel that, look, it's an MPC market. There are many competitors. The demand is very price elastic. You add a few more firms coming in, it's going to change it in such a small way, right, that it's not that big a deal to emphasize. And so some teachers choose not to teach it that way, and they just teach you to do it as a parallel shift. So which is the correct version? Both are correct, right? One version is to pay special attention to the change in elasticity. The other version basically thinks that maybe that's not that big a deal. We don't want to emphasize it. So if your teacher teach it as a parallel shift, perfectly okay. If your teacher teach it as a non-parallel shift that get a little bit less steep, that's perfectly okay as well. So follow whichever version your school teachers are teaching. All right, so with the AR curve shifting in, then take note, MR curve must be twice as steep as the AR curve. Sorry, I didn't draw this precisely correctly. MR and AR must start from the same vertical intercept, right? But the MR must be twice as steep as the AR, right? So once I have drawn this, then the next thing would be to identify the new profit maximizing point between the MR1 and MC curve. And then that gives me my Q1. Then following the same rule, from Q1, I go up to the AR curve and the AC curve. Then I get my P1, AC1, I get my normal profit. So this is the way we draw adjustment from long run super normal profit back to short run normal profit. Right, from long run super normal profit, how the market adjusts back to short run super normal profit. And what causes this? The thing that causes this, right, is your characteristic number 4, the absence of entry barriers in the long run for MPC markets. Okay, so some of you are going to say, wait a minute, my school, I remember my school said low entry barriers instead of no entry barriers. So which one is it? Theoretically, the way when economists designed this theoretical market structure MPC, it was designed as no entry barriers. Some of your school teachers, right, recognize that when applying this to the real world context, very frequently in the real world, even in the long run, some MPC markets have low entry barriers. So they choose to acknowledge that and change it to low entry barriers. That's fine, right, on the application level. It's just that it contradicts a little bit to the conclusion about normal profits. So what you can do to reconcile the two is to think of the entry barriers in the long run are so low that they are almost as good as no entry barriers. So low, but to the point where they are not meaningfully blocking entry anymore, right? So you can think of it that way. All right, so I have a question that just came in. So we tilt. Wait, where's my mouse? Cannot find my mouse. Okay. So we have a question from Justin. So we tilt it to become gentler, cause the PED become greater and the demand become more price elastic. Correct, right? And the reason why it becomes more price elastic is because now there are more competitors in the market. Okay, so that's the reason. I think EJ teaches non-parallel too, right? If I'm not wrong. All right, so how to draw this graph? So what I want to do, right, is I want to teach you how to draw the graph. Right? If you look at the diagram, your AR and MR must be AR must shift in and become steeper, right? Now, when you draw it like this, right, there is going to be a situation where your MR1 and MR0 will intersect, right? If you extend this far enough, your AR1 and AR0 will intersect. In the exam, right, try to avoid this. Your school teachers don't like it when you intersect the new AR and OAR. They also don't like it when you intersect the new MR and the OMR, right? So for mathematical reasons, which I will not discuss here in this video, it's okay to intersect one, but mathematically, just that for some reasons, your teachers, it irks them, right? When they see the new MR and OMR intersect or the new AR and OMR intersect. So avoid, right? Avoid this. So one way to avoid this, right, is to make the line shorter, right? So make the line shorter. Then this way, you completely avoid the problem of intersecting, right? So if you face this problem, just adjust the length of the AR-MR so that they don't intersect, right? But then you crowd the whole axis with a lot of letters. All right, so this is the way we draw the graph. Okay, now this part we'll skip. Okay, so I want to now recap. So C4, no entry barriers in the long run, is the reason why we have only normal profits in the long run. So in the same way, right, if I had subnormal profit in the short run, then what will happen is that in the short, okay, I think this point a lot of students miss. Wait, Gerald asked a question before I continue. Let me address Gerald. Can I draw for convenience and extend the line to intersect the x-axis? Meaning what, Gerald? Meaning cross below or just touching? If you're talking about just touching, then no problem. Can you cross below the x-axis, right? that is mathematically perfectly okay, but depending on your school and your teachers, they may or may not like it. In Raffles, for example, the teachers don't like it. In Eunoia, I am not sure. You have to check your current set of school notes, right? In your JC1, right? So in your school notes, you check whether your school draws it with protruding beyond the axis. If it does, then oh, you mean you want to do it just for labeling, for the purpose of labeling? But again, as I said, it depends on your tutor. Your tutor may like it, your tutor may not like it. Check the way your school does it, or you can directly ask your tutor the next time you are in school. Yeah, your teacher say don't cut, right? Yeah, so this is what Gerald is saying. Teacher say don't cut. So any other Eunoia people here, please take note. So you're assuming Gerald is, wait, who is not Gerald? This is Gerald senior. Okay, so Gerald, this is your senior clarifying for you. The teacher say don't cut. All right. See, it's good to have a live stream when different people are around, so you can have seniors in year 6 or year JC2 giving information to year 5s. All right. So the next point I want to talk about, right, is P2. So P1 is about profits. P2 is about variety. Variety is about consumer welfare. Is this market structure a good market structure in terms of performance? Is it performing well from the perspective of consumers? Are they serving consumers well in terms of variety? The PC market, right, sucks big time, right, when it comes to variety. Imagine, right, every shop, right, is selling the homogeneous product, right? It will be like so boring, right? So because with human beings, we like variety. So if you go into an NPC market, you get some variety. For example, right, you go to eat chicken rice, right? This chicken rice store, the chili is a little bit spicier, right? That chicken rice store, the garlic somehow tastes more garlicky, right? Another chicken rice store, the chicken is juicier. Another one, you know, the rice is more fragrant. So they have variety because they have some product differentiation. However, because of the slightly differentiated nature of the product differentiation, the variety that consumers get is relatively low, right? And the variety doesn't come from one firm. One firm doesn't give you a lot of choice. However, the variety comes from the fact that there are many such small firms where the choice is available. Like for example, right, I live in the East, right? I live in Pasir Ris. I frequently go to this place called Changi Village Market to eat. And I kind of like to eat the nasi lemak there. But there are like 4 or 5 different nasi lemak stores, right? And they all have a little bit of difference, right, in their uniqueness. Right? One store, the chili tastes a little bit different compared to others. Another store, right, the chicken wing is fried in a different way, etc. So you have a bit of product differentiation, gives consumer a little bit of choice. So every store don't give you a lot of options, but in the whole industry, right, there are more choices because there are choices across different stores, but they are only slightly differentiated. Right, that's P2. Now we go to P3. P3 is innovation. So innovation is again about consumer welfare. Do firms, right, typically direct resources or devote resources to doing either process or product innovation? If they do, why is that a good thing? It's a good thing for consumers. If you do product innovation, consumers get to look forward to better goods, right, over time, like oligopolistic market, right? Like your Samsung phones and your iPhones and your Huawei phones, right? And your Honor and your Oppo, they innovate and come out with new products every year. Right? And so you get better and better phones. If they do process innovation, where they come out with better methods of producing goods, cheaper methods of producing goods, maybe even greener methods of producing goods, right? That consumers feel that I'm buying a product that is more environmentally friendly. So all these are innovation that serves consumers' interests, either in terms of quality of good, functionality, or cost, right? They will benefit consumers. Do MPC firms innovate? Number one, there is limited willingness to innovate, coming primarily from slightly imperfect market knowledge. Why? Because if it is relatively easy, right, for your rivals to learn what you have spent time and energy developing, then you wouldn't have a lot of incentive, right, to go and spend the time, energy, and money, right, to go and develop a new product that people can copy. Right? Plus, right, your ability to innovate is very limited because you can only earn supernormal profits in the long run. You don't have excess profit to direct into resources. That's why you look at hawker stores, for example. Things don't evolve very much, right? The wonton noodle today, right, isn't going to be that different from 50 years ago, right? Roti prata is roti prata, right? Yes, we now have innovation. Now we got this thing called cheese prata that 50 years ago it didn't exist, right? But the level of innovation is very, very simple. Somebody decided to add cheese into prata, and then some consumers liked it, and now everybody has cheese prata, right? So it's easy to copy. So nobody, right, no prata shop is going to say, oh, I'm going to like spend money, right, going to a lab and do R&D about what would be a good way to innovate a new kind of prata, right? So the ability to innovate is low due to absence of supernormal profit, and the willingness to innovate is also low because of the level of imperfect market knowledge is only really slight. All right, then that brings us to the last performance, which is efficiency. MPC firms are allocatively inefficient. What does that mean? To be allocatively efficient, you need to be at the point where P equals to MC, right? P equals to MC in the long run is the condition for allocative efficiency. But when firms are price setters, your P is greater than MR. What does this mean? If you recall from your diagram, let me erase this. This is your AR, this is your MR. At the profit maximizing point, let's label LR, AMC. At this quantity, your price is here. Your marginal cost, marginal revenue at this quantity, MR, is smaller than your price, right? P is greater than MR. But because the firm is a profit maximizing firm, it will produce where MR is equals to MC. Then if P is greater than MR and MR is equal to MC, you add this inequality plus this equation, you get P greater than MC. And if this is true in the long run, then we have allocative inefficiency in the economy. So any price taker firm, right? Any price taker firm would be allocatively inefficient because as a price taker, P is greater than MR. Now, in the very old syllabus, in case there are some adults here watching the video, even very old syllabus where they had to learn this thing called first degree price discrimination, it was possible for a price setter to have achieved allocative efficiency. But based on the current syllabus, where first degree price discrimination is not in the syllabus anymore, for the current syllabus, it is safe to say that other than perfect competition, all other market structures, because they are price setters, where P greater than MR, we will not achieve allocative efficiency, right? So that's the first idea. Next idea of efficiency is productive efficiency. Productive efficiency has two levels. A firm, oops, what just happened? Okay, sorry, my screen just blanked out for a moment. Okay, now it's back. Right, so the first, under productive efficiency, there is a firm level efficiency and there's an economy level efficiency. The firm level efficiency, right, is about the firm operating somewhere on the curve, right? So if you, let me see if I have a space here. Okay, I don't have a space. Let me redraw this. Right, so if you look at the long run average cost curve of a firm, productive efficiency, right, refers to a situation where when a firm produces its profit maximizing output or whatever level of output it chooses to produce, if it is operating on the curve at any output, I emphasize the level of output it chooses doesn't matter, but whatever output it chooses, if it is incurring an average cost equal to the point on the curve, the firm is incurring the lowest possible average cost it can incur for that level of output. This is called firm level productive efficiency. What is called productive inefficiency? Productive inefficiency is when the firm producing Q naught, right, incurring a higher cost than it absolutely necessary has to. So this is a firm incurring an unnecessarily high cost for the output it is producing. This is when the firm is productively inefficient. So firm level productive efficiency is based on whether the firm is operating anywhere on the curve or if it's operating above the curve. Now, do MPC firms achieve this? Then the logic here, right, is that in the long run, right, MPC firms can only earn normal profit. If you recall how the normal profit graph look like, the normal profit graph in the long run, the MPC firm at profit maximizing quantity and price must earn normal profit. Then at this normal profit, right, the firm is earning, there must be a tangent point here, right? Now at this point, the firm is productively efficient. If the firm was productively inefficient, the firm would have to operate higher than the AC curve for the output level it's producing. That puts the firm in a subnormal profit position. If the firm is in subnormal profit position in the long run, then it shuts down, right? It fulfills the shutdown condition and this firm will close down. Then you can argue now, right, logically say that any firm that didn't close down at long run equilibrium as a MPC firm must therefore not have shut down, right? And they must not have been productively inefficient. So any productively inefficient firm would have to shut down in the long run. So the only ones that survive are the efficient ones, right? So that concludes our second efficiency point. Now the third efficiency point is economy level productive efficiency. What is economy level productive efficiency? Unlike firm level that says that the firm only needs to produce on the curve at whatever output level the firm chooses, you need to be on the LRAC curve. Productive efficiency, as I explained last video, right, last week, is that the firm must produce at what we call the minimum efficient scale, which is not only must you be on the curve, you must also be on the curve at the output that correspond to the lowest possible average cost that your firm can ever achieve, right? So then once you are here, then you will fulfill what we call economy level productive efficiency. Can MPC firms do it? Then the answer is they can't. Why? The logic is very simple. Go back to the profit max, long run equilibrium. At long run equilibrium, the firm can only earn normal profit. At normal profit in the long run, there must be a tangent, right? So the profit max point must be a tangent. A tangent of a downward sloping AR curve and a U-shaped AC curve can never be at the MES. It will always be lower than the MES. This means that the MPC firm in the long run will never produce an MES. So it will never be productively efficient at the economy level. So allocative efficient, a definite no. Productive efficient firm level is a definite yes. Productive efficient at the economy level is a definite no. And dynamic efficiency is about whether the firm in MPC will direct resources, sufficient resources to R&D. Then in this case, it doesn't, right? Because of the absence of supernormal profit. So the absence of supernormal profit leads to no ability to innovate and limited willingness. So innovation is very little. So this contributes to dynamic inefficiency. Okay, Dian, you wanted me to explain again the points about economy level productive efficiency, why it's not achieved. So let me explain again. To achieve economy level efficiency, I need to be at this point, right? On the graph and correspond to the lowest point. If you are an MPC firm at long run equilibrium, at your profit maximizing quantity, you must earn normal profits only. And that means your AC curve and the AR curve must be a tangent. So the tangent of a graph with a downward sloping AR curve and a U-shaped AC curve will never ever occur at the minimum point. It will always occur on the falling arm of the LRAC curve. Okay, I hope that helps clarify things. All right, so with that, then we finish the idea behind what is MPC markets and what is how the characteristics of the MPC market will affect the behavior and how it will affect the performance. All right, so that is 1 hour, right? Because of the time constraint, it's a bit late, so I'm not going to carry on more. So now we'll give a little bit of time for Q&A. Right? Anybody has any questions that you want to ask, please feel free to ask. Yeah, and Justin can go and sleep. Unless you're already gone. Okay, do we have any questions from anyone? Okay, while waiting for your question, then let me just do one thing, right? So suppose, so let's look at effects of event. I'll just do one scenario. Effects of event. So suppose there is an increase in fixed cost of production, right? So this is my event. Suppose there's an increase in fixed cost of production. How do we analyze, right, the impact of this? So let's draw a diagram first. So we begin with price, revenue, cost. Now I will first draw a AR curve, MR curve, AR naught, MR naught. Let's label this properly. So AR naught, MR naught. So I'll draw my MC curve, Q naught, P. I'm going to give it a normal profit as my starting position. All right, so this is my initial situation. The firm is earning normal profit. Now then my event happens. There's an increase in fixed cost. If there's an increase in fixed cost, only the AC curve is shifting, the MC curve doesn't shift. So I shift up my AC curve until it touches, it goes at a higher point, right? So at this point, but make sure the MC curve cuts the AC still at the minimum point of AC. Yeah? So at this point, at this quantity, the firm's AC becomes higher, right, at AC1. So let me draw this a little bit further to make it clear. So AC1. So the firm now earns subnormal profit because of this. Now notice how the profit maximizing point doesn't change. So Q not Q1 is the same, P1 is the same as P0. So the only thing that has changed is that the average cost has gone up and the average cost per unit at profit maximizing point has gone up, and now the firm makes subnormal profit. Now in the short run, what happens? The firm makes subnormal profit. Does the firm shut down as a result of this subnormal profit? It most definitely doesn't, right? Because the shutdown condition, if you recall from last week's video, right, is when the total revenue must be less than the total variable cost. Ceteris paribus, variable cost hasn't changed. Price hasn't changed. Quantity hasn't changed. Total revenue hasn't changed. Variable cost hasn't changed. Shutdown condition hasn't been met. The only thing that is increasing is fixed cost. So there's nothing happening in the short run other than the firm making subnormal profit. Now, what happens then in the long run? In the long run, then some firms will hit the long run first. Not all firms will hit the long run at the same time. Those that reach their long run period first are going to realize that, oh shit, I can't cover my costs anymore, so I'm going to shut down. So as firms start to leave the industry, the market share that they were holding on to, right, then gets redistributed back to the remaining firms, right? As more and more firms leave, each remaining firm that hasn't left, right, face a higher and higher market share. As they give higher and higher market share, then their AR curves, right, will start to shift outwards. Where does it shift? It must shift until normal profit, right? Now, if you do a parallel shift, right, then it's going to rise to somewhere here. But again, some of your teachers will say, oh, I prefer that you draw a non-parallel shift that gets steeper this time. So you just draw a non-parallel steeper shift. So you have a AR curve that shifts out and becomes steeper. Notice how I deliberately avoided intersecting my AR1 and AR0, right? And then I have a MR1, also avoiding intersecting MR0. Then I get a new quantity Q2. Okay, sorry, let's label this as AR2, MR2 instead. Right, so I have a Q2 that is higher than Q1. That makes sense because firms have left and the remaining firms now get to sell a little bit more. And they get to sell at a higher price than before to reflect the higher cost. And at this tangent point, you have a higher cost, right? So the firm goes back to a long run normal profit position, right? So adjustment from short run subnormal profit caused by the increase in fixed cost led to exit of firms in the long run. Remaining firms gain market share. AR-MR curve shifts upwards, becomes steeper, the AR-MR curves, because to reflect the fact that there are fewer competitors, my demand become more price inelastic as my good is now less substitutable. But I need to get back to normal profit. So this is a tangent point between AR and AC, right? So that brings us back to a long run normal profit. That's how you will draw this diagram. It's a bit messy, a bit complicated, but please practice it, right? When you are at home. When you are at home, sorry. All right, so I have questions now. Let's see. So we first have Gerald. Do we need to explain characteristic during essay? Gerald, not so much explain, more describe characteristics. So you got to describe the characteristics from a theoretical level, and you need to describe the characteristics in context of an example of an NPC industry. I say, oh, hawker stores, for example. Then you describe the characteristics in context of the industry. Right? Or if you do oligopoly, then you choose an oligopolistic industry and you describe the characteristics in that context. So characteristics is not so much an explanation, it's more of a description. All right, then now I have Sam, whoever Sam is. For questions that ask about LRAC and MES, do we draw the LRAC curve with MES or the normal AR-MR curve? Do we draw the LRAC curve with MES? I don't understand your question. Do we have to state which one is LRAC and SRAC, or do we just draw and explain AC? Okay, I think I know what you mean, Sam. So when you are explaining a long run situation, right? Let's say anything to do with long run profits or efficiency concepts. Once it's a long run idea, you have to label your AC-MC curve as LRAC and LRMC. The Cambridge Markers rule is this: if you don't label LR, I will treat it as you are talking about short run. Right? If you label it as LR, if you want to talk about LR, you have to label LR. If you don't label, we will assume you're talking about short run. So there's no need to write SRAC, SRMC, but there's a need to write LRAC and LRMC when you're dealing with it. Right? So in my case here, there was no emphasis on long run, so we don't really need to write LRAC. But when we were doing efficiency point just now, talking about allocative efficiency, productive efficiency, we have to label the curves as long run curves. All right, so in the exam, there will be such scenarios. So what kind of events, right? What kind of events that you can be tested? So you can be tested increase in demand, right? You can be tested decrease in demand. You can be tested increase in average, increase in fixed cost, the one we just covered, right? You can also be tested decrease in fixed cost, right? The opposite case. Then you can also be tested increase in variable cost, where AC, MC both will shift. You can also be tested decrease in variable cost, where AC, MC both will shift as well. So these are the 6 individual changes that the examiner can test in the exam. And the examiner can also test combination, right, of these in the exam question. So far at A-level exam, effects of event testing on market structure has ever only appeared in the high order question in essay. It has never come out as a low order question. However, in school exams, in tests as well as promo exam, it is oddly popular to set a part A low order question to test you to explain the short run and long run effects, right, of events on firms in different market structures. So you say, oh, what happens if there's a recession? Explain how, usually they have two events, right? Recession, right? Falling demand, right? And explain how this, together with a rise in variable costs, how these two events affect oligopoly firms a little differently from monopolistically competitive firms. So this would be a popular question in the exam. All right, so if you haven't started, you can take on our 16-day firms challenge, where some of the days will be practicing the diagrams on the different market structures of those events, right? So you can do those, try out, finish, not sure if it's correct or wrong, PDF scan, hand in for grading, right? Hand in for assessment, that I will mark it for you. Or if you are not under me, you're under Mr. Ko, then you can always scan and submit to Mr. Ko, and he'll mark for you if you are his student. If you're my student, I'll mark for you. If you are not our Kai Academy student, go check your school tutor, right? Go check your school tutor to see whether this is correct or wrong. They will be willing to help you. Or if you are a friend of one of my students, right, ask my student to help you to check, right? They should know how to be able to check the correctness. All right. Do I have any more questions from anyone? Okay, anyway, owing to the fact that it's already 10:11 or 10:12 already, I'm going to assume there's no more questions for now. If you have any further questions, please feel free to WhatsApp me directly or type into the message in this YouTube video, the recorded version of this YouTube video. I see a message, I will respond. Okay, thank you everybody for your time, and I will see you guys next week. Due to some requests, I might do international trade next week instead of continuing with market structure, so more for the J2s. All right, then that's all for today. Thank you. Good night, everyone.